Welcome back, everybody. Today, we are going to talk about a very serious subject, and that is the subject of hell. Is there really a hell? Obviously, we're not going to cover everything about it, but we're going to look at some of the biblical words that are used referring to hell or death and find out exactly what does the Bible say about it. And so before we even get to that, I actually want to look at this question. And the question is, why would there even be a hell? Why would God torment people in this place of fire and pain and torture? Why would he even do that? And here's the simple answer: because God is just, because God is holy. He cannot overlook sin. He cannot just say, oh, it's no big deal, we'll just let you go on in your sin. He has to punish sin because of his character. Now, that actually could take a whole video. We could talk about that, and that's not the point. We just need to understand that it's because when we sin, we are doing an affront to God's character. It's like we're saying, I know you created me, you made me to glorify you and to obey you, but I don't care. I'm going to live my own way. And that is an affront to the character of God. So therefore, we deserve punishment in hell forever. So that's the why. And so we're going to look at this a little more. But one more thing we need to look at is something that is not true, and that is annihilation. Some people will think, well, after we die, we're just gone, right? We're just annihilated. You don't have to go to hell or heaven, nothing. There's just nothing there. Well, obviously, the Bible does not agree with that. And I'm going to show you several verses here. We're just going to walk through some of these today. And here's the first one. This is Enoch. Enoch was a guy who was a believer in the Old Testament. He was a believer in the Old Testament sense. And we're not told much about him other than that he walked with God and he was not, for God took him. Now, it just wouldn't make any logical sense for us to think, well, God just annihilated him. He was so good that God made him disappear. What kind of incentive is there in that to do good, to be good? And so obviously he went to someplace better if God was rewarding him for being so great. How about Elijah too? The same thing goes for Elijah. Here, Elijah and Elisha were walking along and God took him. It says, then it happened as they continued on and talked, suddenly a chariot of fire appeared with horses of fire and separated the two of them, and Elijah went up by a whirlwind into heaven. So Elijah went somewhere. Where'd he go? Went up into heaven. Heaven's not the subject we're talking about today, but he went up there into the skies. He went somewhere. He didn't just disappear, right? Job, what did Job say? Job is a guy who went through a lot of troubles in his life. And as he's going through his troubles, and he says, for I know that my Redeemer lives, and he shall stand at last on the earth. And after my skin is destroyed, this I know, that in my flesh I shall see God, whom I shall see from myself, and my eyes shall behold, and not another, how my heart yearns within me. So Job knows that when all of this is over in this life, when all of these struggles and trials are over, I am still going to be around. And we can continue to talk about other passages in the Bible where it shows that annihilation is not an option. Even Revelation talks about the dead as though they're still alive, though not physically. So there is life after death. But the question we have is, where do dead people go? Where do they go when they leave this earth? Well, we have obviously the Old and the New Testament, and we have some words that are translated sometimes as hell. And I want to look at these just really quickly today. Here's the first one. This is from the Old Testament, so obviously it's a Hebrew word, and it's the Hebrew word Sheol. You've probably heard this term before somewhere. Sheol simply means the place of the dead. It doesn't describe anything else about it necessarily. It's just where dead people go. This word appears 65 times in the Old Testament, translated as hell, it's translated as grave, it's translated as pit. Basically, it's what we think of as the underworld, or the place where people go when they die. We're not talking about whether they're good people or bad people, just they go to Sheol, right, when they die. Let's look at some verses here. This is Genesis chapter 44, verse 29. This is when Jacob, also known as Israel, his sons wanted to take Benjamin to Egypt, and he didn't want him to go because he was afraid he'd lose Benjamin like he had already lost Joseph. And he says this, but if you take this one also from me and calamity befalls him, you shall bring down my gray hair with sorrow to the grave. That word grave is the word Sheol. So is Jacob in hell today? No, this is just a generic word. He just says, I'm going to die. If you take this son from me and he dies, then I'm going to die too. There's another situation there in the Old Testament where Moses is leading the people of Israel, and he has a problem with this guy named Korah, who starts this rebellion against Moses. And God does this new thing where, he sets all the followers of Korah in one spot, and the ground splits open and they all fall in it. And it says this: so they and all those with them went down alive into the pit. That's Sheol. The earth closed over them and they perished from among the assembly. That's a bad way to go, but that's exactly what happened there. It just says they died. It doesn't say that they went anywhere particular, just that they died. They went down into this pit. Back to Job. Job also, it says that he wanted to go to Sheol. He was in such pain that he wanted to go to Sheol. It says, oh, that you would hide me in the grave. Oh, that you would hide me in Sheol. He says, my struggles are so big, I just want to be in Sheol. Now, was he looking for hell and punishment? No. He just says, I want to die. I'm in such pain and such turmoil here that I am just ready to die. Here's a verse where it particularly says that the wicked people will be in Sheol. The wicked shall be turned into hell. Sheol. All the nations that forget God. So the wicked will be in Sheol. Job plans to be in Sheol. And then one more here. Ecclesiastes 9 says that everyone will be there. Whatever your hand finds to do, do it with your might, for there is no work or device or knowledge or wisdom in the grave, Sheol, where you are going. So the idea is work hard, because you're going to die one day, and then your work on earth is done. That's what we're being taught there in Ecclesiastes. The point of Sheol is that we get one shot at living on this earth, and then we die. The word Sheol doesn't mean anything particular as far as torment or not torment. It's just the place where people go when they die. So now we're going to move to the New Testament, which of course was primarily written in Greek. And we find another word in the New Testament, and that is the word Hades, which also might sound familiar to you. And Hades is actually the Greek equivalent of the Hebrew word Sheol. It just simply means the place where dead people go. Just a couple verses we're going to look at here. This one, 1 Corinthians 15:55. This is the one that I read oftentimes at a graveside when I'm doing a funeral. Oh, death, where's your sting? Oh, Hades, where is your victory? Yeah, people die, right? But that's not the end. People die and we think, oh man, death has won. Death has defeated them. No, it hasn't. Not for the believer. They still die, go to Hades, right? But it's not a place of punishment necessarily. It's just where people go when they die. How about this one? Revelation 20, verse 14. This is at the end of time. Death and Hades were cast in a lake of fire. So this whole place of death was going to go there, but the believers won't be there anymore, right? Believers today are with the Father. So sometimes it's just like with Sheol. Sometimes it's used as the place where the wicked people go. Sometimes it's just used as just simply the place of the dead. But what gets really interesting is when Jesus came on the scene, he started using a different term for the place where unbelievers and for wicked people go and they die. And this is it. It's the word Gehenna. The word Gehenna literally means the valley of Hinnom. This is a valley that was outside of Jerusalem, and it was used sometime as a place where criminals' bodies would be burned, and it was a trash heap, a dump. And it's almost like if you can picture Jesus and people are standing there in Jerusalem and they're overlooking this valley, and this kind of smoke is coming up and there's a stench because of all the trash. And they knew that, criminals, their bodies would be put there. And it would just give this picture of a torment. And Jesus started using that term when he was describing the eternal punishment of unbelievers, of wicked people. And they even say child sacrifices were done there sometime. So you just kind of understand that this is a place of bad punishment now that Jesus is talking about. He's not just saying, yeah, everybody dies and, they go to the place of dead. He's saying there's some people that go to a place of, that's a place of torment. Here's one place right here, Matthew chapter 5, verse 30. Jesus is talking in this passage here about if your right eye causes you to sin, you better to pull it out. If you have one part of your body that's making you sin, you better to get rid of it. For it is more profitable for you that one of your members perish than for your whole body to be cast into hell. And that term there is Gehenna. He's saying it's better for you to get rid of a body part than to be cast into this place where you are going to have this torture forever. Now, these aren't the only places in the Bible that talks about it, but I didn't want to make this video too long. I want my next video in it to talk about the rich man and Lazarus. Maybe you know that from Luke chapter 16. I want to look at that a little bit because it gives a better picture of what the afterlife is like for people who are not true believers. And I want to look at that also from another angle. Is it a parable or is it not a parable? I think it's a lot of fun to look at that, but whatever it is, whether it's a parable or not, there's a truth that Jesus is telling us, and that is that the wicked people will be punished in a place forever. And who's wicked? Those are the ones who don't put their trust in Jesus Christ. And the book of Revelation is also very clear as it talks about the lake of fire. When it talks about a lake of fire, that's pretty clear what you're talking about. It is a place of eternal punishment. So yes, there is a hell, and yes, it is for the people who do not put their faith in Jesus Christ while they're alive. Join me for the next video. God bless.